Hello there, Key Stage 3. This is Mr. Palmer again, ready for your second lesson in our long distance learning, discussing writer's aims scheme of learning. This is lesson 2, which I've called Quote Explosions, and this is the first part where we'll look at the beginning of the story. And this is for week beginning Monday, the 22nd of June 2020. A reminder of our big question for the term, which is how do writers create memorable characters and situations? And the learning path skills we're looking at are 1, writer's aims, 5, reading skills, and for a challenge, 3, vocabulary. If you want to have a look at your learning path skills explained, year 7, you can pause here. And year 8, you can pause here. And in today's lesson, we're going to be looking at learning path skill 1 and learning path skill 3, but mainly we'll be looking at number 1. So we're going to do our vocabulary. A quick reminder, we're doing 2 words every week instead of all at once, and the display of those words has changed somewhat. Here's a reminder of what the word classes are. This is on your knowledge organizer too, and this is going to be quite useful today. So if you need a reminder of that, we did it quite a lot last term, and obviously you've done it before in your school lives, but there's a reminder there for you if you want to pause there. Quick reminder, for each word I want you to write down all of the classes that are there, making sure you check the spelling, repeat the words aloud after I say them, then write the definition for the word. You can use your own words if you can. And then on slide 2, I want you to write an example sentence using the prompt question I give you. So our first word is motive. So repeat after me. Motive, motive, motive. And motive is a noun, meaning the thing that causes you to do something, often something bad. Now, we need to know that motive and motivation, although they're similar, don't mean the same thing. So motive is the actual thing that causes you to do it, while motivation is a sort of the thoughts and psychology behind why you do things. So motive is an actual thing. As a result, there aren't other forms of motive. It's just the noun form. So to use in a sentence, I've written that when I broke into my brother's bedroom, my motive was to find his comics collection. So that was the reason I broke into my brother's bedroom, was that I wanted to get hold of his comics. Now, my motivation might have been that I persuaded myself I needed them, that I got really brave and I got ready to do it. And the motive was to get my hands on those comics. So remember those differences. The question for you is, what sort of decision might the motive of making friends cause a young person to make? So when you think about young people, that motive is making friends, having new friends. What might a person do? There's all sorts of things you might be able to think of. So I'd like you to have a go at that, please. You can use the sentence starter here if you want, or you can even try and write a sentence a bit like this, which is a bit more narrative. As a challenge, you could think about motives for good behavior, because it can be used for good behavior. It's just often used for poor behavior or crimes. So pause there and complete your sentence. And if we move on, our second word is interrogation. 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 I hope you're saying that after me. Interrogation. And that's when someone is asked a lot of questions, often with great force. So we have our adjective form, which is interrogative. So an adjective would go before a noun. So you might have an interrogative meeting with someone, maybe. Our verb, to interrogate. So if as a teacher I was sitting down a child, I might say, I interrogate this person. And the adjective, interrogatingly. What did you do with my comics? My brother asked interrogatingly. So there's all sorts of different ways. It's one of those words that can be used in all the forms, but our noun form is interrogation. So pause there and write those down. And we'll move on now to use it in an example. So I was subjected to an in-depth interrogation after the last slice of cake disappeared from the kitchen. So in that situation, presumably whoever wanted that cake is coming and asking me about it. So your question is, for which crimes do you think the police might have to conduct an interrogation? And I've framed a sentence for you here that you can use if you want. If the police were investigating something, they would have to conduct an interrogation of, and that there would normally be a type of person. You interrogate a person. Um, and your challenge there is to use the adjective interrogative, the verb to interrogate, or the adverb interrogatingly in your answer. So you can pause there. Okay, so we're going to move on now and start looking at our quote explosion. So you don't have to draw them like this, but I find it quite helpful to think about that a quotation is a piece of writing taken from a text. It's the exact words taken from the text. And I like to think of a quote explosion as that you've thrown a stick of dynamite in there and it's gone bang, and you're pulling apart that text to think exactly what is it saying, and what is it telling us about the characters or the setting. So I'd like you to write down that sentence there. That's an exact quote from the text. If you pause and write that down. Right, and then I'm going to demonstrate to you how we go about making a quote explosion. So you can do this along with me. You can be writing these down as you go. I'll go slowly through it. So the first thing I might do is to underline some of the bits of the text that I think are important, that show something interesting. So I've gone for warm, clean, drawn, alight, empty, and chair. And then I might think about why have I selected those. So, for example, why did I select that word warm there? Well, for one thing, warm's an adjective, so I'm going to note that down. And the connotations of that adjective, connotations are remember, the things we associate with words: comfort, happiness, domesticity, which means domestic, it means being at home. So warmth is normally a nice thing, something we associate with being nice. Similar to clean. If I'm thinking about a room being clean, I think it's safe, it's been looked after, it's been cared for. I've then grouped some of them together. So the chairs, the drawn curtains, the lamps being alight. I'm not really looking at the words, but I'm saying that all these things all together are creating a cozy, comforting scene. So we're starting. This is the first line of the story. We're starting that story with a really nice, comforting scene. We then got that word empty there, again an adjective, which is telling us that someone's waiting, they're expecting something. But also, empty could have connotations of loss, of loneliness, of isolation. So there's two meanings to empty there, so that's quite an interesting one to talk about. If you need to pause there to catch up with that quote explosion, you can. And we'll move on to the second one. And after the description of the scene, we have this sentence: Mary Maloney was waiting for her husband to come home from work. Now, here are the words I've thought are important here: the word waiting, her, home, and work. Again, I'm going to go through this one with you. So we'll do it together. So first, waiting, which I hope you know is a verb. The connotations of that verb: expectation, excitement, anticipation. A bit like the empty before, in fact. We know that this is something she wants to happen. Her, I've picked up on that, which is a possessive pronoun. That suggests that her husband is maybe less important to us than Mary is. She's the main character, not the husband. He's just her husband. And that'll be interesting when we see the relationship between Mary and her husband. And then my arrows came up too quickly there. But for home and from work, this is a suggestion, isn't it? That home with her is the best place for the husband to be. When he's at work, he's not in the right place. He needs to come home and he needs to be with his wife. So again, this whole scene that's being painted for us by Roald Dahl is one of comfort, of home life, of domestic bliss, as they say. Move on to another quotation. So pause there if you need to finish that off. And we'll move on to another one. So she took his coat and hung it in the closet. Then she walked over and made the drinks. So I've highlighted took, hung, and made the drinks as being bits in this little section that are quite interesting. So these verbs, took and hung, they show the obedience of the wife. She's performing tasks for her husband. So she's not a very dominant person in this marriage. The man is in charge of the relationship, and she performs tasks for him. Similarly with made the drinks, although this also shows the routine. When Mr. Maloney comes home, she takes his coat, she hangs it up, she makes him drinks. They sit down and they drink their drinks and they talk. This is what happens in their life. This is their routine. And if you remember in the story, it's the fact that the routine changes when we start to realise that things aren't as they ought to be. So here we have Patrick saying to his wife, "Sit down." And I want you to have a go at this one yourself. So the first question is, what does this imperative verb suggest about how Patrick is treating Mary? So remember that imperative is when you're ordering someone to do something, bossing them around. Notice he isn't saying please, thank you, or anything there. He's just telling her to sit down. Similarly, why is that short sentence that he says? He doesn't say anything else. How does that demonstrate Patrick's attitude? So I'll let you pause there and have a go at writing those down, and then I'll tell you what I think. So please pause there. Okay, so hopefully you wrote something for this one along the lines of that imperative verb shows that Patrick is ordering Mary around, that he's short-tempered, that he's on edge. The shortness of the sentence similarly might say that he's worried about what's going to happen. Of course, at this point, Patrick knows that he's going to tell his wife he's leaving her, and Mary doesn't. But also, he's showing quite a lot of impatience with her, isn't he, when she doesn't know what's going on. You think about the fact that Patrick's well aware of what's about to happen, but Mary, for all she knows, they're just going to have, at this point, she thinks they're going to go out and have dinner. So the way he's treating it isn't sympathetic to her, and it makes us as a reader quite dislike Patrick. So let's go on to the next one. I've skipped the bit where he tells her about the affair and tells her he's leaving. So I've gone up to the bit when she comes up behind him and kills him. So Mary Maloney simply walked up behind him, and without any pause, she swung the big frozen leg of lamb. The bits there I've selected to talk about are simply and walked and without any pause. And I want to know, what are the connotations of that adverb simply? I want you to tell me what are the connotations of the verb walked. And why do you think Mary's pause does? Why do you think Mary doesn't pause before killing her husband? What does this suggest about her mental state? So I'll let you pause there and work on answering those questions, and then again I'll talk you through them. Now, obviously, you will have had your own ideas, but I'm going to say that for simply, our connotations of simply that there's no fuss, it's natural, that it's just what she does. There's no sort of theatre to it or drama to it. For walked, I think that in this context, walk is quite a calm approach. You know, she's not running up to him, she's not screaming or shouting or anything like that, or sneaking. She just walks up behind him. So it shows that sort of calm way that she's attacking him. And in general, the fact that she doesn't pause, there's a couple of things this shows. So one thing, it could show us that Mary's made up her mind. She's going to kill her husband. She doesn't worry about it. She just walks up behind him and she hits him with the leg. So that's one way of saying that. When I think about her mental state, I might think that she's in such shock because of what her husband's told her that she's not really thinking properly, and she's gone into a sort of autopilot, that she's just performing actions and she's not really thinking about them. And obviously it's not until maybe after she's hit him that she starts to think about what's going on. And then afterwards, Mary says to herself, all right, I've killed him. So Sorry about that then. This is the last one for this part of the video. So I'd like you to do this quote explosion all by yourself. So I'd like you to decide what words you think might be important here, and what does it show about Mary. And I will see you in the second video and we can go through that one together. Thank you very much.